1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, guys, let's have a look at the Queen's Royal Entrance. Now, for a few pieces now in this book, we have been looking at position D, D major, right, which is this position here. And most of these pieces that we've been playing have been using this D major chord, which is a D, an F sharp, and an A. Okay, now in this piece, we continue to use our D major chord. But now we are going to intersperse it with another chord that's very familiar, which is the C major chord, which I hope you can recognize from earlier in the book. Okay, so we are playing between D major and C major. And that is basically the whole point of this piece. Okay, so what I would do when you're playing is please pay attention to note lengths and long and short staccato notes. So as we see in this very first example, here's the first line. Okay, so you start with our D major chord, and one way to really differentiate between the two, besides reading each chord, is to look at the bottom note of every chord. Now you see, if you look at it, the bottom note of the D chord is a D, and the bottom note of the C chord is a C in both hands. Okay. The other way to tell the difference between the two is the D chord has an F sharp in the middle, and because they haven't marked any sharps in the key signature, they have to mark the sharps for every D chord. So all the D chords have an F sharp in the middle, whereas the C chords don't have any sharps. All right, it's all just white notes. Okay. All right. So looking at the first line again. All right, we have a 4-beat note in the left hand. Add the right hand, keep the left hand down, and then it's a C chord. Same thing, 4 beats here, adding the right hand, holding everything down, and then measure 3, we have all staccatos. You notice you play both chords in that third measure. Okay, going down to the second line, starting again with the D chord, again with a 4-beat note. And this time the right hand is playing 8th notes. Alright, so on beat 2, so C chord on beat 2, 2 and 3, 4, and we go back to our staccato note Ds, and then staccato Cs. Okay, now that basically happens exactly in the same way at the end of the piece. Alright, so now let's have a look at the middle section. The middle section is entirely in position D from both hands. Okay, so you don't have to worry about going back and forth between D and C. Just stay in position D here. Okay, and if you want to notice from measure 9 until the beginning of measure 17, you see this little pedal bracket which is underneath there. So please remember to use your sustain pedal. And just to remind you, sustain pedal is the rightmost pedal of your piano. Okay, so you just push this down when you start playing measure 9, and keep it pushed down. You don't have to change the pedal at all. Just keep it pushed down the entire time. Okay? And as we're going, just follow the fingerings along and notice that most of these intervals are fourths. So you have a fourth here from the A to the E, right? And then another fourth from the G to the D, right? That's the right hand part. And you know, just a little hint here, left hand plays exactly the same thing. Two sets of fourths. And then two, count to two. 1, 2. That was measure 12, where you're playing two half notes, counting to two E's, okay? Then you will play basically the same thing in measure 13. This time, adding your left hand, okay? And left hand is only playing an A every time, every measure, okay? Here we go. Here's measure 13. Look, the right hand is playing the same thing, just a little bit louder than before, right? Now we're mezzo piano. Measure 15 is slightly different, okay? Now we're playing eighth notes in the right hand. Left hand plays the same thing. And you're going to make a crescendo through this bar if you can manage it. So we'll start at mezzo piano and we're going to crescendo over 2 bars to forte, all right? So we're going to go E, D, E, A, E, D, E, A. Get louder. Count to 2 here. We'll play together. 2. And now we lift our pedal after you hit that D chord. And basically you're playing exactly what you played at the beginning. Okay? And then the eighth notes. Alright, try to keep a loose wrist, supple wrist, right? Especially on these eighth notes. Chord, and back to our D chord, and then the very last note is a D but down the octave, so you're going to have to jump your left hand down, and you notice that the pedal, sustained pedal bracket is also on for that last measure, so please put the pedal down. Okay, now the last thing I want to talk about is those last 2 measures, right? So you notice that was the first time I played 2 chords that weren't a D and a C chord, right? So what I would recommend is have a look at what those chords look like when you have 3 notes, all a third apart like that. We know we are in the root position, okay? So this is back to our D chord, right? This is the first chord of measure 23, right? If you're reading the bottom note of every chord, the second chord that you see that's not a D chord, which is the third note actually on beat 3, the bottom note is an F. And you notice there's a natural sign there, so it's an F natural, okay? And as we can read, they're all on spaces here, 3 spaces in a row, so that means they're all the third apart. So we just play in the exact same hand position that we did that we were using in that D chord. We're going to play with F as the bottom note. And this is an F major chord, okay? And then looking onto the very next note, you notice that the bottom note steps down 1 note, as does the other notes. So all the notes step down 1 note. The bottom note of this chord is an E, and there's notes on all 3 consecutive lines there. So that's an E minor chord. And then it steps down again, back to D, okay? So looking at the last 2 measures again, right? We're going to start and measure bar 23, okay? So we're playing left hand D, right hand D. We're going to jump up, F major, E major, see, jumping, E minor, sorry, jumping down, and both hands play D major, and then you're going to jump down for the octave jump. So let's just practice that. Try practicing that by yourself a few times, like this, and practice doing these little mini hops with our hand, hopping. And even when you're doing all these, these chords where you're playing, try to be loose with supple with your wrist. So you can do a little bit of hopping, like that. Okay, it makes it a little bit easier, okay? Okay, that's basically the gist of this piece. It's actually not so difficult to learn, and I really hope you enjoy preparing it, okay? That's it for now, and we'll see you in the next video. That's it for this video. If you found this video helpful, please consider clicking on that like button and subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching!